When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Archaeotech Podcast, episode 93. Today, Chris and Paul talk archaeology and data collection in the face of natural disasters. Let's get to it.
All right, welcome back to the Archaeotech Podcast, everyone. Paul, how's it going?
Doing all right. How are you doing today, Chris?
Not doing too bad. We're recording this a couple days before Thanksgiving, so for everyone listening to this, you're already fat and happy and hopefully eating leftover turkey sandwiches. I'm already jealous because that's really...
And not too sick of all the leftover turkey.
I know. I don't even care about Thanksgiving. I'm just like, on the Sunday afterwards or so, I just want a nice Sunday afternoon turkey Thanksgiving sandwich. So anyway, that ends up kind of being a disaster because it never works. Speaking of disasters, so let's talk about, that was a horrible segue, but let's talk.
I thought it was half good, actually. I mean, half bad too.
Yeah, exactly. So I had to do a lot of traveling this past week. I was at the Southeast Archaeological Conference in Augusta, Georgia, which was a really good time. And from a tech perspective, technology still at these regional conferences is dramatically underrepresented. I was happy to see, I guess, four tech related booths out of probably 40 of them, which, for an archaeology conference isn't that bad. So I was there representing WildNote. Michael Kappers was there representing Interis Registries. And if you're looking for kind of a back-end database collection management type system, but you can't input data into if you have servers and stuff in the field, but it's really designed for, really data entry like that. I'm actually going to be working with him to produce a WildNote import for that for people that need to work with tablets and smartphones and offline. But anyway, really great system. He was there. He's at all the conferences. Beta Analytic was there for all your radiocarbon needs. And of course, Direct AMS out of Seattle was also there. So that was kind of cool from a tech perspective, but still a little sad that there isn't more competition in the market to hit a relatively big regional conference like the Southeastern Archaeological Conference. But, we're getting there. It's coming along.
My wife was away at the ASOR conference, the American Schools of Oriental Research, in Denver last week, and I should have asked her. I didn't, but if there was much of a tech presence there. I don't know how much time she spent in the vendor booths area though of the conference. Yeah,
everybody seems to always go there at least once as kind of a reprieve from papers and stuff. So. All right. Well, anyway, I'm saying that because on the long flights back to Reno from Georgia, I caught up with the latest issue of the Society for American Archaeology's Advances in Archaeological Practice publication. And there's a lot of good articles in it. We're going to be discussing a number of those articles over the next several episodes. And if we can get some of the authors on, we will. So we're still in talks with the authors of this article we're going to talk about today. So we're not going to necessarily talk about exactly what they did in the article, and I'll get to that in a minute. But we're going to have a little more general discussion about this on the assumption that we will get them on, so I don't want to repeat ourselves 2 episodes in a row. But the article was called Finding the Positive in the Negative, Archaeology and Data Collection in the Face of Natural Disasters, and it was written by Tanya M. Perez and Aaron Dieter Wolf. And like I said, we're not going to really go over this, but we're going to talk about the broader implications of this. So
it'll be the jumping off point.
Yeah, exactly. I will summarize it quickly what they were basically talking about. It's about their site was a river in Tennessee, and there was a lot of flooding. And after the flooding, people were noticing basically looters pits and a lot of erosion of, river edge sites. And their whole article is basically, okay, so what can we do to sort of mitigate that in the future? How do we deal with what happened now? How do we deal with looters and things like that? So that's basically what we're going to talk about today. And hopefully we can get the authors on to talk specifically about their study site and the things they came up with next time around. So
yeah, I like this topic too, because right now California is having these horrible wildfires. So the notion of natural disasters, especially if you believe that they are in large part due to climate change, and a lot of people do believe that. I certainly do.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that we as archaeologists are going to have to deal with more and more frequently, and so it's worthwhile to think of how certain people have tackled it, like in this article, and how we ourselves may tackle it, and for the purposes of this podcast, what kinds of tech we can bear to bring to tackling the problems.
Well, according to our president, all we need is a rake to avoid more forest fires. So I think that damages archaeology sites, though.
Probably, yeah. Your scatters go a little wider than they should be.
It's like, where are all these artifacts? Who raked up this forest? Oh, my God. So if you don't know what we're talking about, then you're better off for it.
Yeah, just turn off the news. There's nothing good there.
Just turn it off. Just turn it off. So, yeah, I mean, not only are we dealing with a higher than average number of forest fires, that not only are there more of them, but they're more deadly because a lot of areas are just drier and with heavier winds. It's not necessarily just the dryness that causes things to burn. It's the wind that causes it to push across the landscape in such a hurry. And that's why people in Paradise, California, which was virtually wiped off the map, they had little time to get out. And as of this recording, I just saw, I think this morning, there was they found up to 78 people that have died in that fire. But there's still over 1,000 unaccounted for. Now, a lot of those people, because of the infrastructure right now, are probably just unaccounted for because they're not even aware they're being looked for, and they're out somewhere just doing what they can do. But there's going to be a lot more people found that didn't make it. And, that thing moves super fast, and it can happen really quick. They had about an hour to get out, and that was it.
Yeah. Terrible stories of people being trapped in their cars trying to get away from it.
Yeah. So another natural disaster that is happening right now that we have, I wouldn't say a lot of time to deal with, but we definitely have more time than, a forest fire. And that is the effects of global warming on sea level rise. And sea level rise is a problem in a lot of parts of the United States, and especially, other parts around the world. But here in the United States, I mean, look at Florida. I think sea level rise has to rise maybe like 2 feet or 3 feet or something like that before like 80% of Florida is underwater, because most of it's flat. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget seeing an airport, because I'm a pilot, so I always kind of pay attention to airports. And there's an airport in South Central Florida. I think it was near Lake Okeechobee, and they always post the altitude of the airport. The field elevation out there on the fence or on the tower if they have one or something like that. And it was 7 feet. We were like 2 hours from the coast, and the altitude was 7 feet. So that's not a lot when you're talking about sea level rise.
No, not at all.
No, and that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about here. We have time right now to start planning for not only the long-term effects of sea level rise on our coastal sites, which there's a lot of smart people trying to figure that out. And really it comes down to money. We're not going to save those sites necessarily, but we can at least go excavate them, gather the material, learn what we can, and then, hopefully put that material somewhere where other people can learn from it. But I mean, there's nothing we can do to really stop sea level rise at this point. We can slow it down, I think, but we're not going to stop it. And then there's of course, what comes along with that as all this freshwater ice melts and goes into the saltwater, causes bigger storm systems. Those are the things that, like they were talking about in this article, that we have to start making those relationships with government agencies now. So they understand that archaeologists have to be kind of first responders and go in and help mitigate these disasters from a historical perspective after they happen, but set up those relationships today, and try to figure that out.
Yeah, that was one of the big take-homes from that article, and I'd like to definitely go into that more with the authors if we can get them on. But that they had already a network of state archaeologists, academic archaeologists, and amateurs that knew each other and had worked with each other and had trust between each other. And that trust is really a critical, important part there. But they had these networks of various interest groups that could all work together and could all mobilize fairly quickly for a common project. again, I think that's not a strictly tech thing, even though we're here on the Archaeotech podcast. Maybe there's some tech ways that could be brought, that could be made more effective. But I do want to ask them some of the details about how they managed to mobilize a lot of people for on short notice to work on their project. Yeah, another problem with global warming is that a lot of the carbon dioxide has been soaked up into the oceans. The oceans are also able to soak up a lot of the excess heat, and there have been some studies lately that are saying that they are really quickly running out of the ability to soak up any more carbon dioxide or heat, which means that more heat will be staying in the atmosphere, which means a generally more volatile system, as more energy is trapped in the system of our atmosphere here. That's going to show in the form of droughts, which will mean fires, and it'll show in the form of severe weather events, which will often mean floods, and mudslides and the like that go along with heavy rain events. So, wow, I've got the feeling like disaster archaeology is really going to become a big thing over the next 10, 15 years.
Absolutely. I think so. It's going to be its own field, really. Right now, cultural resource management is often called salvage archaeology, right? Because we're trying to salvage something from, development, and that's all 100% man-made, obviously. So, and we still have a hard time staying ahead of the bulldozer, and making sure that the archaeology and the history are spoken for, mitigated, and in some cases excavated, and because they're going to come in no matter what we do.
One of my first experiences with salvage archaeology as a term was a course I took as a first-year grad student on the Bronze Age archaeology of Syria, and a lot of it had to do with site reports from projects that were done around the Tabqa Dam and Lake Assad as that was rising. I think that was the 1970s. And so there's a lot of, actually everybody is probably familiar with the moving Abu Simbel, right, in Egypt because of the dam. And so these dam projects in the Middle East, that really spurred a lot of salvage archaeology. If you ever get the chance to see, there was some Nova special years ago on a site in Turkey, a Roman site called Zeugma, and they found these fantastic mosaics, and they're excavating the site, trying to record these mosaics as the waters are literally rising up into the trenches. It's harrowing, not in the least because of how spectacular these mosaics are. Anyhow, that's a sidetrack. But I couldn't help but think about Zeugma and Tabqa Dam as I was reading the article. And it's a skill set that I guess we as archaeologists have had for a while, and have had to deal with because of intentional destruction, development by people, but it looks like it's going to be more and more important to do it, as a first responder. That's brought up in the article, and I think that there's some validity to that.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think what some people deal with doing these things. There's another article that we're going to read and possibly discuss on the show, where they're trying to record these near vertical sites. I think it was down in Peru or something like that. And, they're using ropes and things to get down to these sites. And sometimes in these areas, just access is difficult. Access is extremely difficult. And as this water starts to rise, like you were saying, you're just fighting it the whole time. You're trying to get in there and figure out what the hell's going on. There are caves in, Portugal, somewhere along either the Atlantic or the Mediterranean coast. So I think Spain, maybe France down in there. But there's caves with rock art and other things inside of them that you have to dive to get to, because when those were created, they were exposed to the elements, and now they're underwater, or their entrance is underwater. The cave itself might be accessible inside once you have some lighting inside there, but the entrance is now completely underwater. And it's just, I don't know, it's amazing to me how these things are changing. I think some of the things we got to look at here, like what are the major problems when we lose sites or we have these natural disasters? Obviously, two of the biggest problems are losing the sites entirely, and of course, looters. We talk about looters all the time. People trying to make a quick buck, on picking this stuff up.
Yeah, and sometimes depending on the severity of it, you might have some sympathy for them because they may have just had their house wiped out, and and this is a way to actually, hopefully for them, gain some income and not starve to death. So it might be a complex problem. I don't think the people looting in this article seemed like that. They seemed very opportunistic and maybe professional too. But. Yeah, so we have destruction of sites by any of a number of different forces. The biggest one that we're discussing is, we discussed flooding, especially with coastal sites, the erosion of sites because of heavy rain events and floods. And, California, we're getting these burnt sites. Now, that might actually, if you're strictly just talking about identification of sites, if you burn away a forest, you might actually see more sites than you otherwise would. So maybe that's a two-edged sword. I don't know. But the other ones, I can only see reducing the number of sites that we have. So I guess the important thing is to be able to know where we have to look and how we can best get to these sites to quickly assess them to find out what the condition is, what kind of damage they've taken after we've had one of these events.
Well, I think two things to remember with forest fire affected sites as well is that that's probably not the first time a fire's been over that site. I mean, fires happen in the West all the time. And before we were doing anything about it, before there were even people, consistently here in the same place, like Europeans, basically, before they settled on the farms and stuff. I mean, the Native Americans were largely nomadic and moving around for the first, 10,000 years they were here and, or more. And they would, they leave their artifacts, they do whatever they're going to do and stuff gets deposited and then fires happen. I mean, millions and millions and millions of terrible fires have happened in California and the West in the past 15,000 years of human recorded history. And so that's nothing new that's happening. That being said, when the fire does go over the area, the repeated exposure to fire can change prehistoric artifacts. Of course, we always look at, chert and other things as being fire affected and how it changes the composition. If it's a specimen with a high number of like gas bubbles inside of it, the right temperature of fire or length of time a fire is on there could make it explode and then, fragment it. You see that with rocks and stuff all the time. And then any sort of pottery and things like that, those are usually pretty resistant to heat because they're fired to begin with. So they're not affected as much, but it could destroy our ability to, do some sort of residue analysis or anything like that if a fire hadn't actually been across it since it was deposited. Maybe it's only a few 100-year-old site or something like that. There hasn't been fire since then. But historic sites, they're completely destroyed. Unless it's even like a glass scatter or a tin can, they melt. And glass melts and structures burn away and they're just gone, and those are lost forever. So, all right, well, we've got some other stuff to discuss on this. I've got some other notes and I think a little bit of a checklist of what needs to be done and maybe how it can be done. And we'll discuss all that on the other side of the break. Back in a second. Hey, podcast fans and digital archaeologists. Have you heard about WildNote? It's a data collection app that works online or offline on your smartphone or tablet, iOS or Android. It allows you to collect field data easily, manage data efficiently, and generate data reports and site records effortlessly. We have a growing list of state site forms built in for your use and some generic forms that will work anywhere. Check out the shovel testing and photograph forms. You can get a free all-access 30-day trial today by going to wildnoteapp.com. That's wildnoteapp.com for your free 30-day trial. Tired of the webinars and training offered by the big organizations not being free for members and not really covering what we need? Team Black has the answers. Check out arccert.black/main for our upcoming webinar schedule. All of our webinars happen once a month and seating is limited. Learn everything from field tech basics to drones to digital workflows. We have more classes coming online every month. Classes are always 1 hour and cost just $20. Classes like building a CV and getting a job are always free. That's right. We'll help you get a job, then we'll be here when you want to level up your skills. If you are a professional subscriber to the APN at arcpodnet.com/members, then you get all of Team Black's offerings for free as part of your membership.
we have Team Black memberships coming that will give the same for the APN. So $20 a month gets you all the APN swag and extras, plus free training from Team Black. So check out arccert.black for more information and level up your skill set today. That's arccert.black. Now back to the show.
All right, welcome back to the Archaeotech Podcast, episode 93, and we are talking about archaeology in response to disasters, natural and otherwise, and what we could do about that. So, I want to go over real quick, I think, what the basic checklist is, and then we'll talk about some technology that can be used to handle certain points in this checklist. But when we're thinking about archaeology, we don't want to just be responsive to, things that happen. And that's kind of what they were talking about in that article, is setting up relationships with agencies and doing some other things ahead of time, so you at least know what's out there. And of course, the first line of defense is just survey, knowing what you have. Where are your archaeological sites? What do you have? And that's a tall order, because there's billions of acres of land that haven't been surveyed, and no one's going to pay to just get that done because we feel like we want to get it done. Now, you might be able to, in some cases, encourage, say, grad students or university programs to focus their field research. They're always looking for projects. Focus it in disaster-prone areas, maybe, like on the coastal areas. Maybe focus it in coastal areas or along rivers or something like that, where there could be flooding. And that's one way we could get some survey done, on the cheap. And then we, of course, have to educate the public as well. Let them know, hey, we have archaeology and history that's really important, and we need to have measures and things put in place and funding so we can take care of this stuff. And also, here's why you shouldn't go loot it. Of course, we always have to have that conversation. Mm-hmm. Of course, with some of those sites, we can excavate and get rid of them. Just totally dig them up, just in case there's a huge problem. Do it ahead of time. That's highly controversial, though. If you're excavating something and you don't really have a reason for it, you're just doing it to do it. That could be problematic. And then I think the final thing is condition assessments. Once you know what you have and once you know what's out there, you can do periodic condition assessments. And that's where I think the technology is going to come into play here. Paul, do you think I missed anything in this list here? I just kind of made it up during the last segment.
Yeah, no, I think that you are missing one thing that ties into our last couple episodes, which is access to the data.
Yes.
So with Keith Kintai, we were talking about projects that have been completed and recorded and deposited at the state historic office, whatever, and not accessible really to anybody because they're not cataloged properly, not curated properly. That I see as a serious impediment. And that was in the back of my mind all the way through reading the article, was that, at least they know where they were looking for the sites. They knew what sites were in that area. And so they went specifically looking for sites that were already known. And I can't help but wonder, well, what about places where you don't have that sort of, that kind of knowledge or that easy accessibility of the databases of sites in an area? So that's the other thing I would add to your checklist is a comprehensive database, really, of sites that need to be checked in on.
That would be so phenomenal. And, to tie this into an even earlier episode, I think it was a couple of months ago, we interviewed a gentleman who did some graduate school research in Beaufort County, South Carolina. Remember that, where he was doing like the whole trying to figure out where all the mounds were, using those mathematical algorithms? Well, he's just created a database of sites in a disaster-prone area. Yeah. And, who has access to that? Yeah, I mean, you need to be able to go to do the research and then put it in a place, like you said, where people who are qualified to do so can now come and find out, okay, this is where all this stuff is, and we can go deal with it now.
Given then what Kintai was saying about the sorry state of the preservation of archaeological records, that kind of highlights the importance then of having these networks of different interested parties that know and trust each other, because if something does happen, you could then reach out to local universities, to local historical societies, to any of a number of different, obviously the BLM or state, the SHPOs or whatever, depending where you're at, to try to quickly compile a list if you don't have some centralized repository of such a thing.
Yeah.
So again, that's not strictly a technical way. Maybe that's a way of dealing with some of our technical deficiencies at the moment. But it does, for me, highlight the importance of those networks.
For sure. Well, I think to bring technology and archaeology back into this as well, talking about the final thing I had there, which was condition assessments. And when I say condition assessments, I really mean, I do a project that I've mentioned before for an outfit here in Nevada, where I go back every year and I basically take pictures and I'm doing condition assessments. So I was like, what has changed since last year? What has changed since 5 years ago? And is there something we can do to, prevent loss or whatever if that's occurring? And that's a condition assessment. And rock art has often been a study or a subject of condition assessment needs, because rock art is subject to not only other graffiti and people defacing the rock art, but it's subject to erosion, and rocks just naturally, break off, and freeze thaw cycles will cause entire boulders to just break over, the course of thousands of years. And so we need to know, okay, what do we have? What don't we have? I've been to plenty of big rock art sites where there's boulders laying on the ground, and you see that there's rock art all over the place, except for this one area on the wall. There's a huge swath where there's no rock art, and there's a huge boulder sitting in front of it upside down. Well, guess where the rock art is? It's underneath that 2-ton boulder. But we don't have the condition assessment data to know that was there, to know that, what did that look like? So we need a baseline. We need somebody to come through, take imagery, satellite imagery, drone imagery, something, and do condition assessments in these highly prone, disaster prone areas, especially from like flooding and things like that. And that way, when the flood does happen, we can come back through and do more condition assessments, and we can see that. And if this is done periodically, then we can also see evidence of looting. We can know where to put more on federal land. We can know where to put more federal law enforcement services if looting is happening there for some reason more than it's happening somewhere else, and go from there. So I think that'd be good. Of course, who's going to pay for it?
Yeah, well, that's another thing.
Yeah,
it would employ a lot of archaeologists, though.
It would. Yeah, we just need a company to do that.
Is the site that you do the condition assessments on, that's a rock art site?
No, it's actually 3 prehistoric sites.
And when you go there, do you have a checklist of what you need to do for your condition assessments? Is there things in particular that you need to look in on?
Yes. So for this particular one, what the metric the Forest Service has put up, it's Forest Service land, is I have anywhere from, depending on the site and the size of the site, there's anywhere from 10 to 20 photo locations where I go to that GPS point and I take a photo in the same direction from the same point every single year. And I basically just compare that to the 7 years of data I now have. And then I've got the data from the 5 years before that they were doing that other companies were doing it. And that's what I used to do the condition assessment. And of course, on site, just visual note taking, is there a new road through here? Have the cattle spent a little more time here than they usually do? And there's, they're just destroying the site, which overall, that's who's really destroying the site is the cattle. But yeah, so I do basically have a checklist of points that I go to and then, do the assessment from there.
That's So the checklist, as soon as you're talking about doing a condition assessment, it seems to me that for the purposes of damage assessment, whether it be from development, whether it's permitted development or unpermitted development, or incidental damage because of cattle grazing, and the example you just raised, or because of some sort of natural disaster or weather event, even if it doesn't quite rise to the level of a disaster. Having checklists that are regionally appropriate seems like it would be an important part of that. You go to site A, you need to check X, Y, and Z. You need to record, A, B, and C with, in these manners. So that way you've got comparable data sets from one year to the next. Gee, and that's a whole nother project, isn't it? Not just having the people on the ground doing that, but the people who know what needs to be looked at beforehand, so the people that are on the ground know what exactly to look for. Wow, we're really thinking of great ways to employ archaeologists in perpetuity, aren't we?
Well, and I think there are ways to do this. Is if we identify these areas, like let's say we include in, I think it's called Global Explorer, the program that Sarah Parkak set up after she won that TEDx prize. Right. I mean, it's basically set up to find looting in archaeologically sensitive areas. And when people because there are satellite evidence signs of looting that you can see, there's telltale signs of looting across the world in different environments that, hey, every time you see this, it's probably looting. And so there's a crowdsourced website set up that's basically you go in there, it runs you through a training program so you can notice the signs of looting. It has you select on pictures where you think this is happening and then grades you on that and tells you how you did and improves everything that you're doing. And then you look through this series of images and you just say whether or not you see presence or absence of these signs of looting, because computers right now have a really difficult time doing that. And they don't understand that this little discoloration here is actually a looter's pile, whereas this other one is not. It's a boulder or a rock or something like that. It's just a really hard thing for computers to figure out.
It's just pixels.
It really is, yeah. And it takes a human to actually really do this. And even humans get it wrong, which is why it's crowdsourced. So, I don't know how many they take before they send it off to some archaeologist to go check out, but it takes probably dozens of people to click on the same image and say, yes, there's looting there before it goes to the next level. And then it's assessed at a different level, probably by a professional. But if we could just add, say, flood prone, potentially archaeologically sensitive areas to what they're doing, then we might be able to recognize these things as they're happening. Because chances are, in that article, they mentioned along this Tennessee River, there were so many looters piles, but the looters were there because they already knew archaeological sites were there. They just figured their job was made easier because the river took half the bank away. And now this stuff's just eroding out of the edge. But they're not stupid. They're highly trained. Whether they were professionally trained, I don't know. But archaeology is not like, you're not in the Secret Service. You can go read books, watch YouTube videos and documentaries and stuff like that and learn how to do archaeology and learn how to figure out where sites are. It's not, I hate to say it for everybody who's been through college like us, but it's not that hard, right? To learn this science and figure out where these things are. It's not like doing brain surgery. You can figure it out. And these people they're not just your weekend hobbyists. They're people that they were probably, the minute the weather report came out and said there's a storm, they were probably cleaning up their field gear and getting ready to go. And they just knew what was going to happen. They knew they would have a short window before people came out there and started assessing the river and the damage to the river and things like that. And then, driving up and down the river in boats probably and looking at it. And they were already there and gone with all their artifacts, human remains, whatever they collected. And like I said, they're professionals. They know what they're doing. So I think personally that some of the ways that we can do this, especially in our waterways, and maybe this is an Army Corps initiative that has to happen, because the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers are the ones that maintain our national waterways and patrol our national waterways, and really are kind of responsible for making sure they stay clear and they're usable and, they're not polluted and stuff like that. That's their job. And if we just had some regular periodic, condition assessment, whether that's satellite imagery or, drone flights or something where people just know, hey, somebody's watching, somebody's keeping an eye on this, and we might grab some images that have looters in action or something like that. I don't know. I've dealt with not looters. I have dealt with looters occasionally in the field, but, where I worked in Yemen, what we dealt with was just a disregard for where archaeological sites are. And I can't bring the people who are doing so, disregarding the location of the sites I can't hold them really to task angrily about it, because they're just trying to live. Most of them are farmers who, really are living very marginal lives, but they need extra land to farm on. And so they bulldoze away a medieval fortress, and that's something I've seen. I didn't see it as it was being bulldozed away, but one year it was there right at the edge of the road, and the next year, just flat spot. I thought, well, that's not right. I found other sites where people need to expand their fields, and so somebody dug away what might have been a really cool pre-Islamic village with a temple. And all that we have are the few buildings right at the edge of the site, and a sherd scatter in between all the furrows of the modern field. So I feel like a lot of the tools that we'd use for assessment and hopefully mitigation would be useful not just for looting, not just for natural disasters, but also for all the incidental stuff as we keep on making more and more people living on this earth. It's all going to be increasing, I expect. I have no doubt. Yeah. So, well, I think I think we've pretty much hit this topic, and I'm hoping that we can get the authors on to discuss what they did and some of the things they came up with, because they've got some pretty good recommendations in the back. And I know I had some issues with a few things in the article, so I think it would be good to talk to them and see how it went. I would say if you have worked in or are concerned about or have any ideas about condition assessments, or working in disaster prone areas, and some of the ways we can work to make those partnerships with federal agencies or state agencies and then do the archaeology in a fast and efficient way. I don't need to say digital archaeology, but that's part of it. Part of it's saving money, part of it is being more efficient, because this stuff costs money and no one wants to pay for it. So if we can increase our efficiency and our effectiveness in the way that we actually do things, then when we do get a little bit of money, we can make it go a lot farther, and we can cover a lot more ground, and we can do a lot more research in a shorter period of time. So I don't know. Anything else to close this segment out, Paul?
Well, somehow we didn't talk a whole lot about tech. So I'm just going to quickly throw out a few things. Drones. Satellite imagery.
I said the word drone.
You did say drones.
You said
drones. I know. You can't go an episode without saying the word drones.
It's true. It's true.
Satellite imagery, GIS, watersheds and that sort of stuff. And, I'd be curious if we do talk to the authors or anybody else that listens to this episode that are using these various tools, or other ones that I haven't mentioned, exactly, how they're using them, what stage of the project they serve, or multiple stages, and what tools are more effective and what are less. It's not something I've done. I've used all these tools. Well, I haven't used drones professionally, but these are tools that have been, at least the satellite imagery and GIS have been in the archaeological toolkit for a couple decades now, and it seems to me like they're naturals for this, but there have to be other new tools coming out too that we can use. For data collection, primary data collection, and also for remote sensing of various kinds. Yeah, absolutely. LiDAR. There we go.
Hey, LiDAR. Nice. Another buzzword.
Yep.
I feel like the next time we do this podcast, regardless of the topic, we should just play the drone drinking game. So every time we say the word drone, just take a drink.
Yeah.
And we'll be good to go. All right. Make sure it's some good scotch or bourbon or something. You don't want to waste it on Coors Light.
It might be safer if you're drinking Coors Light or Bud Light.
Yes, that might be true.
We don't want to kill anybody with alcohol poisoning.
True story. These are archaeologists we're talking about. They
can handle it. What am I thinking?
Yeah, they can handle it. Nice. All right. Well, we'll end this discussion right now, and we'll come back and wrap up this episode in the final segment. Back in a second.
This network is listener supported. We're trying to move away from paid advertising while also creating new shows and supporting the ones we have. The APN has never and will never make a serious profit on our podcast. Every little dime we make goes back into the network and improving show quality. So become a member today at www.arcpodnet.com/members to show your support, get some extras, and be a benefactor for archaeological education. Members get stickers, a coffee mug, a t-shirt, bonus content, early access to episodes, a private Slack team to talk to other members and the hosts, and full access to training on Team Black over at arccert.black. So check out our memberships at www.arcpodnet.com/members today and support archaeological education. That's www.arcpodnet.com/members. Now back to the show.
All right, welcome everybody back to Archaeotech episode 93. And this is the App of the Day segment. I'll go first because mine's really fast. I just think it's a fun little thing. I feel like I've talked about this before in some contexts, but I don't think it hasn't been a focus of an App of the Day segment, so I'm going to mention it again. This is a free app, and it's called WT Forecast. So it's basically like WTF, and you know what WTF stands for. And I'll tell you what, it's just a fun, stupid little application that tells you the weather, but it always says something funny on the screen, and it is not workplace sensitive. So if you don't like swear words and stuff like that, then don't download this app. It's just one of those things. It's actually a pretty good weather app. It's pulling, NOAA weather data. So if you're going to look at the weather every morning anyway, like most archaeologists do when they're in the field, you may as well use an app that's going to give you a little bit of enjoyment out of it and let you see some funny things. It's got radar. I'm looking at moon phases here. You can get the forecast. It's just It's just a weather application, but it'll bring a smile to your face, and it's free. So definitely check that out. WT Forecast. It's not WTF Forecast. It's WT Forecast. And the WTF is all together and capitalized when you're trying to look for it. So again, just a stupid, fun little thing. I know you're going to check the weather. So check the weather, put a smile on your face in the morning, and go from there. I actually kind of forgot about this app for a little while, but I'm going to start using this in the morning instead of the Weather Channel app. Because honestly, I just look at the day forecast and I look at the next 5 days and I'm done. And this tells me exactly that.
I have never heard of this one before. I just searched it on the App Store, on the Apple App Store, and 4.4 thousand ratings and 4.5 stars. So people like it.
I'm telling you, you won't be disappointed. Like I said, if you're sensitive to foul language, then don't download this application.
That should be a given its name.
Yes. But it's fun. It's fun. They have a nice little graphic in the background to represent the current weather. They always have a little thing to start up, and it's just like I said, it's a good app. So that's it for that. What have you got, Paul?
Okay, so I realized I didn't have an App of the Day app today, so I went on the App Store and looked at the main apps that Apple was promoting today, and one of the top downloads was something called iNaturalist. So this one actually looks like it might be useful. It's definitely cool. And this is another one of those ones that takes your phone and tries to identify things that you're looking at. In this case, animals and plants, it looks like. I don't know that it does anything else. It uses your GPS, so it knows where in the world you are. And the app itself is available both on Android and iOS. It is backed by National Geographic and by, scrolling to the bottom of the page here, and the California Academy of Sciences. And it's been around since 2008. So it's been 10 years. I've never heard about this one before, which really kind of shocks me. You open it up, it asks you to log in. So you can set up a profile, or you can use Google or Facebook as a profile, and link into different activities, different projects that people have exposed through the app. You don't have to. You can use it without logging in, and that's what I've done so far. Though I think I probably will create a profile because it looks like it's something that could be a lot of fun for citizen scientists. Explore shows me a map of the area that I'm in. These are buttons across the bottom of the main screen. Activity shows no updates yet because I haven't logged in and I haven't created any content or done anything. But the main button right in the middle is Observe. And then it asks for your camera. You can either grab a photo from your photo roll, or you can use the camera itself and snap a picture of something. And it will then try to identify it. And so I thought, well, this is interesting. Let's see how good it is at identifying things. I'm at work. There's not too much wildlife in my office, despite how hairy my coworker is. And
nice.
Some of the kids may have called him Sasquatch in the past. I'm not going to confirm or deny if that's happened. And I certainly won't confirm that they got the idea from me. But I went and I looked into my camera roll here and pulled up a picture of a raccoon climbing a fence that I saw in Riverside Park a couple weeks back. And it comes up to identify. It says, we're pretty sure this is a family of Procyonidae. I guess that's how you pronounce it. I should have probably checked before I tried reading it on the podcast. Here are top 10 species suggestions. The top one is the common raccoon, and it's flagged as the top one because it's visually similar and seen nearby. And, most of the things that I see, I actually know most of the animals that I see, birds and other animals. Maybe insects I wouldn't know, and plants I certainly would find this much more useful. But then I did, just for laughs, there was also a dead raccoon some weeks back in the park as I was walking home. Really badly dead, skull visible and bits of fur hanging from really gross looking bones. But, I'm an archaeologist, and so it doesn't faze me at all.
Nice.
It's like, oh, hey, something dead. Let me take a picture of that. And I ran that through this, and it said, well, we can't quite identify, but here are the top suggestions. And the top was a coyote, and the second one was a raccoon.
That's not bad.
No, not half bad at all for, a half decomposed animal in the tall grass. So It seems to be pretty good at identifying at least the animals I've seen. I pulled a few others out of my photo roll here. But then if I click over to there's me, I don't have a profile here, so it doesn't have anything else, but I click over to the more button and it gives me projects and guides. So guides will allow me to pull in different kind of field guides that I guess people have put together based off of animals and plants in the area. Projects gives me a list of different projects, and it's full of different. I mean, this has been since 2008. It's 10 years old, so it's full of different projects in my area. I search nearby. The top one is from the American Museum of Natural History. It's a science program, and it only has 15 observations. So I would have to find out exactly what's in this one. But I can see there's a gray catbird, and that is indeed a gray catbird. There is an ovenbird, which I've never heard of. I'd have to find out. Blue jay, kind of moth that I wouldn't be able to identify otherwise. Then I went on the search box because I said, well, let me narrow this down to some of the parks here in New York. So I first looked at Central Park, and there was something in there called a blitz, a bio blitz, which is a kind of activity where you try to identify as many different species of plants or animals as possible through the app here. And so it's a game that's encourages people to get out and about and look at the world around them, which is kind of cool. And then when I did Riverside Park, because I live right next to Riverside, and I see the top hit here, Flora and Fauna of Riverside Park, and look at this, and it's got almost 2,000 observations. So the top one here, I don't know how it's sorted, if it's reverse chronological or what, but the first one is a cedar waxwing. Well, I would have identified that. But then there are different plants that I wouldn't have been able to identify. It shows me pictures that people have taken of the rocks where they go into the Hudson River, and there's vesicled rockweed. I didn't even know that this was a thing. I would have seen that and thought, well, that's pond scum on the rocks. But no, apparently I should have known better. So anyhow, if you, this seems like it would be a lot of fun for amateur naturalists, for people who want to get involved in some kind of a crowdsourced biology project, and certainly for students and kids that like to be out and about and looking at the world around them. So if this sounds like it's something up your alley, I'm definitely going to be playing with this. I wish I had played with it more so I could talk about it a little more intelligently, but it looks like the real deal.
Nice. Yeah, I've heard about iNaturalist quite a bit, actually. I've never used it, but I hear about it I actually just heard about it in the last couple of weeks as well, with people talking to me in the WildNote booth about how they've used iNaturalist for work, not archaeology work, but for some of the biological stuff. Because some of these people that work for bigger firms with those other departments, when one department doesn't have a lot of work, they work for the other department for a little while. And so they mentioned using iNaturalist as a recording and identification tool out in the field. So comes highly recommended by professionals.
Yeah, you could set up your own project and do it if you had to do a survey, if you were a naturalist doing a survey of whatever in a given area. And I think that and as an archaeologist, if you're traveling around and so you're not in an area that you're familiar with, you could probably use it to try to identify potentially dangerous plants or animals. I don't know how strongly I rely upon that as opposed to, hopefully somebody that knows for sure that I'm working with. But it's... So far, it identified what I've pointed at pretty well. So maybe it's worth trusting. It'd be better than not knowing at all, I guess.
Sure. Okay. Well, yeah, great. I think that's it for the App of the Day segment then. Let's mention one more time, because we don't have enough submissions for this. So I want to run it for one more podcast cycle. But if you want us to send you a drone, a nice little drone, yeah, drone. No, if you want us to send you one, we mentioned this in the last couple episodes. Paul found one on Amazon. We'll get it ordered. We'll ship it off to your address. It's a small practice drone. There's a link in the show notes for this episode and also for episodes 92 and 91. And it's a great little thing. And to enter, leave on our Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram page some sort of comment or something about why you want to use a drone. If you're going to put it on Instagram, maybe a picture of you holding up a piece of paper that says, give me a drone or something like that. And then put in the comments what you want to use it for. Why do you want to learn? What's good for that. And then be sure to tag at ArcPodNet. And if you can, also put hashtag Archaeotech, ARCHAEOTECH in the comments. And so we can see it. We need to know that you did that. And you can also leave us a review on iTunes. And if you want, that's one way to get yourself an entry. Again, send me an email. Let me know you left that review, Chris at archaeologypodcastnetwork.com, because iTunes does not let us know that we got reviews. You got to go over there and check periodically. So yeah, let's do that. And hopefully we can send somebody a drone just in time for the holidays so you can annoy your friends and family. And if you do this sort of thing, you can fly it into the Christmas tree, which is inevitably what happens.
And terrorize your cat.
Terrorize the cat, the dog. Yeah, the dog might actually swat it out of the sky and put it in its mouth and eat it. That would be a bad thing. But I don't think the drone could stand that.
Mine was afraid of it until I pointed it out to it. And now he's decided it's something that has to be barked at and chased around the house. And the other day I was flying it, and I was getting a little kind of crazy with figure eights and things, and I bounced it off the wall, and it just went straight at him.
Nice.
And then I picked it up and I flew it again, and he chased it around and I clipped a corner as I went around the corner, and it went straight at him. And then after that, he just went back to his bed and said, "No, I don't like this toy."
That's enough. Yeah,
that's enough. This thing is bad. It's no fun. Why did you bring it into the house? I hate you, Dad.
Right.
I mean, if he had language, that's what he would have said.
It was all in his face, I'm sure. Yeah, you could just see it. All right. So yeah, send those in and let us know why you want a drone, and we will send you one. Not everybody. We're going to draw a name. I need to make that clear. And we'll give you multiple entries. So if you do this on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, if you're like me and you have your Instagram linked to Twitter and Facebook, you get like 3 entries in one. But you got to make sure to go to those other 2 and update the adding and the hashtagging because it doesn't necessarily come over from Instagram. I think it does from Instagram to Twitter, but weirdly, it doesn't go from Instagram to Facebook, the tagging and stuff. But anyway, double check that so you make sure we see the entries. And feel free to, send Paul or I a tweet or something as well, and let us know that you did that, just in case you're worried we didn't see it. So, all right. I think that's it, Paul.
Yeah, I don't have anything else this week.
Okay. Well, like I said, we've got a bunch more good episodes coming up. Hey, even if we can't get the authors on some of these, we'll have a pretty good discussion about some of the stuff coming up. So if you're a member of the SAA and you get advances in archaeological practice, then check out the November issue. I think it was whatever quarter it came out this year. So I think it's the November issue. There's a lot of stuff we'll be talking about from that issue, and there's one on, wait for it, drones. So we might do that one next. I don't know. We'll just have to figure it out. I don't think I've even shared that one with you yet, Paul. So we need to take a look at that. Okay. Well, thanks for listening to the Archaeotech podcast, and definitely come back next time. And hopefully you had a good Thanksgiving. I think Paul and I are on the way there now. So Paul, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for listening to the Archaeotech podcast. Links to items mentioned on the show are in the show notes at www.arcpodnet.com/archaeotech. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com and paul@lugal.com. Support the show by becoming a member at arcpodnet.com/members. The music is a song called Off-Road and is license free from Apple. Thanks for listening.
This show is produced and recorded by the Archaeology Podcast Network, Chris Webster and Tristan Boyle, in Reno, Nevada, at the Reno Collective.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.arcpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.
Thanks again for listening to this episode and for supporting the Archaeology Podcast Network. If you want these shows to keep going, consider becoming a member for just $7.99 US a month. That's cheaper than a venti quad eggnog latte. Go to arcpodnet.com/members for more info.